Blood drips onto white marble, each drop echoing like a judge's gavel in the sudden silence of St. Regis Astor Court. Julian Steele, billionaire, destroyer of companies, maker of fortunes, towers over a kneeling black waitress, his Armani suit stained with Chateau Margaux, his composure shattered like the glass at their feet. "Are you stupid? Can't even do a simple job right, you worthless—" The words slice through crystal chandeliers and champagne bubbles, through designer gowns and platinum watches, landing like blows on Ava Harper, 25, invisible, bleeding from shattered champagne glass, wearing the uniform of those who serve but never speak. She should cower. She should beg. She should cry. She does none of these things. Rising with the kind of grace they don't teach at Harvard, but life carves into your bones, Ava meets his fury with something far more dangerous than anger: absolute calm. "My apologies, sir." Her voice carries across the ballroom like a prophecy, making Marcus Sterling's fingers tighten on his champagne flute, the Sterling Ventures insignia catching light like a secret about to explode. Someone, somewhere, presses record. 6 months before blood stains marble, Marcus Sterling sits behind a mahogany desk that has witnessed the birth and death of empires, his 73 years carved into laugh lines and worry creases that tell stories of both triumph and loss. Across from him, Ava Harper holds a cup of Ethiopian coffee with the same steady hands that once gripped Olympic starting blocks, waiting for the gun that would change her life, though not in the way she'd dreamed. "Tell me, Ava," Marcus says, his voice carrying the weight of 3 decades building Sterling Ventures from a 2-man operation to a kingmaker firm that shapes industries. "What do you see when you look at Julian Steele?" On the wall behind him, a digital display scrolls through Apex Dynamics' meteoric rise, 50 billion in valuation, 40,000 employees across 6 continents, one man's ego inflated beyond any reasonable measure. Ava studies the photos carefully. Julian ringing the NYSE bell, Julian shaking hands with presidents, Julian standing triumphant on the graves of companies he's devoured. Each image a testament to ruthless ambition. "I see my father," she says finally, and Marcus leans forward because Ava rarely mentions the man who walked out when Noah's diagnosis came in, when medical bills replaced college funds, when dreams became luxuries they couldn't afford. Someone who mistakes cruelty for strength, who builds himself up by tearing others down. The plan unfolds like origami in reverse. Complex made simple through careful explanation. Operation Truth Mirror, Marcus calls it. Ava will return to the world she knows intimately, the one where she spent 4 years balancing trays and textbooks, funding her Columbia education one champagne flute at a time. She'll serve drinks to men who see servants as furniture, who mistake silence for stupidity, who reveal their true selves to those they deem unworthy of performance. "I need to see who wants to dance with our money," Marcus explains, though they both know it's more than that. It's about Noah, struggling through physical therapy while teaching himself to code with hands that don't always obey. It's about the 50,000 workers Julian bragged about optimizing last quarter, their lives reduced to numbers on a spreadsheet. It's about the fundamental difference between building wealth and building worth. The irony isn't lost on either of them. Ava Harper, Columbia summa cum laude, accepted to Harvard Business School, about to defer her admission to serve canapes to men who'd fire their own mothers for a quarterly stock bump. But she's done harder things. She's held Noah through seizures that lasted hours, chose hospital waiting rooms over Olympic glory, traded gold medals for golden opportunities to keep her brother alive and dreaming. Now, in the present that will soon be past, Julian Steele commands the attention of 200 guests at the St. Regis, his voice carrying over crystal and silver like a general addressing troops before battle. Behind the practiced charm lurks something else. The desperate hunger of a Detroit boy who once wore the same shoes for 3 years, who learned that power means never being powerless again, who buried his past under designer suits and carefully cultivated contempt. "Ladies and gentlemen," he announces, his smile sharp enough to cut glass, "tonight marks a new chapter for Apex Dynamics. With our AI defense systems, we're not just changing the game, we're ending it for our competition. Human inefficiency will be a relic of the past." The crowd applauds because that's what crowds do when billions speak. But in the corners, phones glow with different stories. Sarah Mitchell of the Wall Street Journal catches the micro-expressions, the way Julian's hand unconsciously drifts to his pocket where a worn photo hides, a reminder of where he came from and why he'll never go back. David Thompson streams live to 2 million followers who tune in for corporate takedowns, sensing blood in the water before it spills. Ava moves between tables like a ghost with a purpose, noting how Julian berates the setup crew, how his voice changes octaves between addressing investors and addressing staff. She's seen this performance before, in different venues, with different actors. Men who mistake cruelty for strength, who build kingdoms on the backs of those they break. The Dom Perignon she pours costs more than most monthly salaries, and she watches Julian drain glass after glass, his careful control dissolving into something rawer, truer, uglier. The gun never fired that day in Eugene, Oregon. 8 years ago, 16-year-old Ava Harper crouched in lane 4, her body coiled like a spring, every muscle fiber trained for this singular moment, the Olympic trials, the culmination of 12 years running from poverty, running toward possibility, running because staying still meant drowning in circumstances beyond her control. The stadium held its breath collectively. 30,000 people waiting for the crack that would launch futures. Her coach whispered prayers in the tunnel, hands clasped around a stopwatch that had timed thousands of practice runs, each one bringing her closer to escape velocity. Then the phone rang. Not hers. Phones were banned in the athlete area, but the meet directors, who found the head coach, who found her coach, who found Ava with words that shattered time into before and after. "Your brother's having seizures. They can't stop them. You need to come now." The words hung in the air like smoke from a fired gun, the starting gun that would never sound for her. The choice that wasn't a choice. Noah, 8 years old, fighting for his life in a sterile hospital room 200 miles away, or the starting blocks that promised escape from every food stamp dinner, every eviction notice taped to their door, every night their mother cried over bills that multiplied like cancer cells. Ava stood up, peeled off her number, 377, she still remembers, handed it to a confused official, and walked away from the only future she'd ever imagined. The hospital in Portland smelled like disinfectant and despair. Noah's small body convulsed against machines that beeped accusations, cerebral palsy complications, status epilepticus, emergency brain surgery needed, 6 figures minimum, insurance laughing in their faces with fine print exclusions. Their mother had already taken 3 mortgages on their grandmother's house. Their father had been gone since Noah's diagnosis made him realize some races can't be won by running away. That's when Marcus Sterling appeared, not like a fairy godfather, but like a businessman who recognized potential energy begging for transformation. He'd read about Ava in the local papers, the track star who chose family over fame, The girl who walked away from glory for something more precious than gold. Sterling Ventures needed someone who understood sacrifice, who could see past surfaces to the structural integrity beneath, who knew that sometimes the most important races are the ones we choose not to run. "I'll pay for the surgery," he said simply, cutting through their protests with practiced efficiency. "And your education. In return, you'll learn my business. This isn't charity. It's an investment in character, the only commodity that appreciates regardless of market conditions." 8 years later, that investment has yielded compound returns beyond any spreadsheet projection. Ava Harper, Columbia University, summa cum laude despite working 3 jobs, fluent in the languages of both service and power, accepted to Harvard Business School, but willing to defer for a different kind of education, learning to read men like Julian Steele the way she once read tracks, looking for the false start that reveals everything. Now, in the crystalline present of the St. Regis Ballroom, Julian Steele performs his origin story for the 100th time. Each iteration more polished, more distant from truth. From a Detroit garage to the New York Stock Exchange, he proclaims, his voice carrying the false confidence of a man running from his past. He conveniently omits the workers crushed beneath his ascent, the families destroyed by his optimizations, the father whose mechanic's hands he's spent 20 years trying to wash from his own with expensive soaps and cheaper morals. But tonight, something flickers in his eyes. Not just alcohol or arrogance, but something deeper. His hand keeps finding his jacket pocket, touching the photograph like a talisman or confession. The careful mask he's worn for decades shows hairline cracks, places where the Detroit boy bleeds through the Manhattan mogul. Ava notices, files it away. Every detail matters in character assessment. Every nervous tick, every unconscious gesture. Every moment when the performance falters and the person appears. She refills water glasses while Julian regales investors with his efficiency philosophy, a euphemism for the 40,000 terminations that funded his latest yacht, the healthcare benefits cut to boost quarterly earnings, the pensions raided for stock buybacks. "The future isn't about employment," Julian declares, his voice climbing with evangelical fervor, whiskey loosening the careful controls he's maintained all evening. "It's about efficiency. Why pay for weakness when technology offers strength? Why maintain human resources when artificial intelligence never needs sick days, never demands raises, never questions authority?" The words hang in the air like an indictment, though Julian doesn't realize he's prosecuting himself. In the corner, Marcus Sterling sets down his glass with deliberate precision. The test is almost complete. The revelation approaches like a storm system, inevitable, cleansing, destructive to everything built on false foundations. The Macallan 25 works its expensive alchemy on Julian's inhibitions, each sip dissolving another layer of carefully maintained composure. The presentation has ended to thunderous applause. The deals are all but signed, and now comes the victory lap, that dangerous hour when powerful men celebrate conquests not yet secured. Julian's eyes sweep the room with predatory satisfaction, cataloging assets and dismissing liabilities with the casual cruelty of someone who's forgotten his own origins. Something catches his attention. A server clearing glasses near the main negotiation table, moving with the careful precision of someone who'd learned that invisibility meant survival. But something about her bothers him, needles at his consciousness, like a half-remembered shame. Perhaps it's her posture, too straight for someone in her position. Perhaps it's the way she doesn't flinch when he approaches, doesn't perform the subtle genuflection he's grown accustomed to from service staff. Or perhaps it's the whiskey unlocking memories he'd spent 20 years trying to dissolve. His mother's hands, cracked from cleaning chemicals, wiping down tables in restaurants like this one. His father coming home covered in other men's engine grease, too tired to wash before dinner. The food stamps hidden like shameful secrets, the eviction notices that came with mechanical regularity. "You there?" he calls out, his voice carrying the false authority of someone who'd bought their breeding. "Come here, clear this mess properly." Ava turns with deliberate calm, each movement calculated to reveal nothing while observing everything. She approaches Julian's table where 5 international investors sit like judges at a tribunal. Mueller from Deutsche Bank looking increasingly uncomfortable, Al-Rashid from the Saudi Sovereign Fund checking his watch, Petrov from Moscow. Energy partners stone-faced and calculating, Morrison from Wall Street Capital barely concealing amusement, and Williams from London Holdings already half turned away. "Gentlemen," Julian announces, gesturing at Ava like evidence in a prosecution, "allow me to demonstrate exactly what Apex's efficiency model replaces." His hand trembles slightly, rage or alcohol or both, as he points at her. "Minimum wage, minimal education, minimal value. This is the human inefficiency we eliminate." The words taste familiar, learned in boardrooms where humans became head count, where families became line items, where his own parents would have been first fired if they'd ever made it past the security desk. But admitting that would mean admitting he was them, and Julian had paid too much to believe otherwise. "Look at her," he continues, his voice rising to fill the sudden silence. "Probably never finished high school, government assistance, no ambition beyond the next tip." The lies flow easier than truth, because truth would mean remembering his mother's 3rd job, his father's bloodied knuckles from working overtime. Mueller clears his throat. "Mr. Steele, perhaps we should— No, this is important." Julian's hand unconsciously moves to his jacket pocket, fingers brushing against the photograph hidden there. "She's what's wrong with America. These people, stupid, worthless, dragging down our productivity." Something shifts in Ava's expression. Not anger, not submission, but a kind of terrible patience. She stands perfectly still as Julian's rhetoric grows more heated, more personal, more revealing of his own wounds than her supposed inadequacies. "My AI systems will replace thousands like her," he declares, gesturing wildly now, wine sloshing dangerously in his glass. "No sick days when their worthless kids get ill. No asking for raises they haven't earned. Just pure, profitable efficiency." "Mr. Steele," Mueller tries again, his German accent thick with disapproval. "This is highly inappropriate." "Inappropriate?" Julian wheels on him. "You know what's inappropriate? Pretending these people matter. She's replaceable, stupid, a rounding error in—" Physics chooses that moment to assert its democracy. Ava, stepping back from Julian's jabbing finger, catches her heel on nothing. Time dilates. Her serving tray tilts. The glass of Chateau Margaux, 1995, excellent vintage, terrible trajectory, traces a perfect arc through air that suddenly feels thick as blood. The wine finds Julian's suit with poetic precision. For a moment, silence reigns supreme. Then, like a dam breaking, Julian's carefully maintained facade shattered completely. "You stupid bitch!" The words explode from him. "This suit costs more than your worthless life!" His foot moves before consciousness can intervene. Italian leather meets flesh and bone, grinding down on Ava's hand as she kneels to clean the wine. Blood mingles with Bordeaux on marble, a communion of cruelty witnessed by 200 phones rising like salutes at a funeral. "Someone get this stupid woman out of here!" Julian screams, unaware that his words are already echoing across social media, that Hat Apex scandal is trending before security can even respond, that his destruction is being live-streamed to millions who recognize in his cruelty their own daily humiliations. Marcus Sterling rises from his corner table with the deliberate grace of a man who's waited precisely for this moment. His movement through the crowd creates its own geography, conversations dying, bodies parting, attention focusing like light through a lens. At 73, he moves with the confidence of someone who'd outlasted companies, recessions, and the hollow men who confused cruelty with strength. "That's quite enough, Mr. Steele." 4 words, delivered with surgical precision. Julian turns, wine still dripping from his ruined suit, his face cycling through emotions like a slot machine seeking a winning combination. Relief flickers first. Here's Marcus Sterling, the biggest fish in tonight's ocean. "Marcus, thank God, this stupid—" The words die as Marcus kneels beside Ava, his movement careful, respectful. His hand, steady from decades of signing deals that reshaped industries, gently helps her to her feet. "Are you hurt?" he asks quietly, examining her bleeding hand with genuine concern. The question hangs in air that suddenly feels charged with possibility. Julian's mouth opens and closes like a fish discovering air was never meant for breathing. "Do you know?" Marcus says conversationally, still supporting Ava but now addressing the room. "I've spent 50 years building Sterling Ventures. 50 years learning to read people, to separate those who build from those who break." He pauses, letting anticipation build. 3 years ago, I met a remarkable young woman. Columbia University, summa cum laude, former Olympic hopeful who chose family over glory, someone who funded her education by serving people like us, learning our weaknesses while we ignored her strength. The silence deepens. "This is Ava Harper," Marcus continues. "My protege, my successor at Sterling Ventures, my daughter in every way that matters." The last phrase detonates like perfectly placed charges. Phones flash like lightning, capturing the exact moment Julian realizes he's been played. But Marcus isn't finished. For the past 6 months, Ms. Harper has been conducting due diligence of a different sort. Not on spreadsheets, but on character. She's been taking the true measure of those who want Sterling Ventures money. "This is entrapment," Julian's voice cracks. "You set me up." "This is business," Ava interrupts, her voice carrying that same unsettling calm. "You showed us exactly who you are, Mr. Steele. I simply served the wine." She steps forward, and 200 witnesses see what Julian missed. The athlete's bearing, the scholar's precision, the leader's presence temporarily wrapped in a server's uniform. "Every word you spoke, calling me stupid, worthless, that was all you. I was just observing, taking notes, conducting the kind of due diligence that actually matters." Marcus turns to his assistant. "Cancel the Apex deal, all $5 billion. "You can't do this," Julian sputters. "Sterling Ventures reserves the right to withdraw from any partnership that fails to meet our standards. Congratulations, Mr. Steele. You've failed spectacularly." The exodus begins immediately. Mueller stands first. "Deutsche Bank also has standards. Consider our participation terminated." One by one, they withdraw. Julian's phone buzzes incessantly. Board members watching the live stream that's already at 2 million views and climbing exponentially. His hand finds the photo in his pocket. His father in coveralls, smiling despite exhaustion. The image flutters to the floor beside Ava's blood, beside any chance of redemption that didn't begin with admitting he'd become everything his father taught him not to be. "Everyone makes choices," Ava says, loud enough for the cameras. Tonight, you showed the world yours. The algorithms of justice work faster than human courts, but true consequences unfold with deliberate precision. Within hours, #Apex scandal dominates every platform. The video of Julian calling Ava stupid and stepping on her bleeding hand becoming a Rorschach test for corporate America's conscience. By morning, the first dominoes begin their measured fall. 1 week later, Apex's board convenes an emergency meeting. The numbers tell their story in red ink. 20% value evaporation and accelerating, major clients initiating contract reviews, employee channels erupting with long-suppressed grievances. The Streisand effect multiplies every attempt at damage control. Julian's leaked emails dismissing the incident as overblown political correctness only fuel the fire. It's not just the immediate impact, the chairman says, sliding a tablet across the mahogany table. DOJ is expanding their investigation. The Pentagon has frozen our defense contracts pending review. And this morning, 1,500 former employees filed a class action suit. 3 weeks pass before the board acts decisively. Julian's forced resignation comes with golden parachute provisions he'd insisted on. Irony in 8 figures. But money can't buy reputation, and his name has become corporate kryptonite. Security escorts him out through the lobby he'd designed to intimidate past employees who document his departure on phones he'd tried to ban. 1 month after the incident, Ava Harper stands before a packed auditorium at Sterling Ventures, announcing the initiative that will reshape corporate culture. She wears a simple black suit, the scars on her hand visible, marks of service transformed into symbols of strength. The Harper Initiative invests $100 million in companies that see workers as assets to elevate, not costs to cut, she announces. Noah beside her in his wheelchair, their shared triumph worth more than any medal. We're proving that dignity drives profits, that character creates value. Noah's presentation follows, his speech software turning limitation into innovation. My sister gave up her race so I could run mine. Today, Dignity Tech creates assistive technology for workplace inclusion. Our Series A funding values us at $200 million, realistic, sustainable, focused on impact over inflation. The announcement catalyzes change across Silicon Valley. Companies scramble to audit their practices, to implement character clauses in executive contracts. The old move fast and break things gives way to build thoughtfully and include everyone. 2 months post-incident, Julian's transformation begins not with grand gestures, but small recognitions. His Detroit apartment, he couldn't afford Manhattan anymore, becomes a classroom where he tutors kids in coding. His students don't know his history. They only know Mr. J shows up consistently, treats them with respect he once reserved for billionaires. Everyone deserves dignity, he tells them, meaning it now in ways he never could before. His father works beside him, their relationship rebuilding slowly. No dramatic reconciliation, just 2 men learning to see each other clearly, perhaps for the first time. Julian's public letter of apology, published 6 months after the incident, doesn't seek forgiveness but offers warning. I became everything I once hated. Don't follow my path. Meanwhile, Ava balances Harvard Business School with her role at Sterling Ventures, proving that service and leadership aren't opposites but synonyms. The Harper Initiative's portfolio companies outperform the market by 30%. Turns out treating workers well is simply good business. The viral moment that began with wine on wool becomes a watershed. Not through legislation, the Harper Act remains symbolic rather than legal, but through cultural shift. Companies discover that cruelty is expensive, that dignity compounds like interest, that the only sustainable success is shared success. 6 months after wine met wool, the Ava effect has transcended business schools and boardrooms to become a cultural touchstone. Harvard and Wharton compete to add the case study to their curricula, professors exploring how one moment of revealed character reshaped corporate values. Students who once idolized disruption now study service, learning that innovation means elevation, not elimination. The Harper Initiative's influence spreads through measured expansion rather than viral explosion. Each quarter, they fund 10 companies that demonstrate dignified innovation, profitable businesses that enhance rather than replace human capability. The portfolio includes everything from restaurants that share profits with servers to tech companies where janitors hold equity stakes. Ava's TED Talk accumulates views like compound interest, 5 million in the first month, 10 million by the second, eventually reaching the quiet ubiquity of required viewing in business schools worldwide. Standing on stage in her signature simple style, she speaks truth with the calm that undid Julian Steele. I learned more about leadership serving champagne than most learn earning MBAs. Every tray taught balance. Every spill taught recovery. Every insult taught me that those who need to step on others to stand tall are already falling. In Detroit, Julian's redemption takes shape through consistent service rather than dramatic gestures. The community center where he volunteers has become a coding academy for displaced workers, teaching skills the modern economy demands. His students, former factory workers, single mothers, kids from his old neighborhood, know him only as Mr. J, who helps with patience rather than judgment. Everyone starts somewhere, he tells them, remembering his own beginnings. What matters is where you choose to go next. His reconciliation with his father deepens through shared work rather than shared words. They don't discuss the past much. Some wounds heal better through action than apology. But when his father's arthritis makes fine work impossible, Julian takes over, his expensive education finally serving its purpose, lifting others rather than leaving them behind. Noah's company, Dignity Tech, grows through sustainable scaling rather than unicorn ambitions. The acquisition talks with Google proceed carefully, ensuring the mission survives the merger, that accessibility remains the core rather than an afterthought. The $200 million valuation feels honest, built on real revenue rather than inflated projections. My sister taught me something important, Noah tells investors who question the conservative growth strategy. There's no such thing as disposable people. There are only disposed opportunities. We're here to reclaim them methodically, sustainably, permanently. Corporate America's transformation happens through thousands of small decisions rather than grand proclamations. Executives spend mandatory time in entry-level positions, not as publicity stunts, but as genuine education. Servant leadership evolves from buzzword to business practice. Companies discover that treating workers well isn't just ethical, it's profitable. The Sterling Harper Center for Ethical Leadership opens with deliberate restraint. 50 students per year rather than 500. Depth over volume. Young entrepreneurs come not to learn disruption, but construction. Not to move fast, but to build carefully. The center's research proves what practitioners suspected. Companies that score high on dignity metrics outperform their peers by 25% over 5 years. Change comes not as revolution, but as recognition. 10,000 moments of clarity that cruelty is inefficient, that kindness compounds, that the only sustainable success is shared success. What started as one woman's refusal to accept worthlessness becomes a movement that redefines worth itself. The service industry, long treated as capitalism's foundation rather than its teacher, emerges as an unexpected classroom. Every restaurant becomes a laboratory for leadership. Every interaction tests character. Every tip votes for the world we want to see. 1 year after blood-stained marble at the St. Regis, Ava Harper commands the Fortune Global Forum stage with the quiet authority of someone who'd served at enough galas to distinguish real power from performance. The scar on her hand catches stage lights as she adjusts the microphone. Not hidden but highlighted, a reminder that some lessons are written in flesh. "A year ago, a man called me stupid," she begins, her voice carrying to 500 CEOs who now take notes from someone they might once have ignored. "He meant it as an insult. I took it as a teacher. He showed all of us, what happens when we forget that everyone who serves us is fully human, fully valuable, fully worthy of dignity." Behind her, images cycle through the year's journey. Viral video to cultural shift, individual cruelty to systemic change, one woman's dignity to an entire movement. Each photo documents not revenge, but redemption, not destruction, but construction of something better. "My brother taught me resilience. My father taught me strategy. But waiting tables taught me truth, that leadership isn't about being served, but being worthy of service. That dignity isn't granted by degrees or titles, but recognized in how we treat those society overlooks." The standing ovation lasts long enough for Ava to think of her mother, who cleaned rooms like this one, whose sacrifices made this moment possible. But legacy lives in more than witnessed triumphs. It lives in values transmitted, changes initiated, dignity defended and extended. In Detroit, Julian watches the speech from the community center he manages with quiet dedication. His students have learned his history. The internet forgets nothing, but judge him by his present rather than his past. Redemption, he's learned, isn't a destination, but a daily practice. "She's right," he tells his father. "We all deserve dignity. We just forget sometimes that we have to give it to get it." The final scene unfolds in Boston, where Ava balances Harvard coursework with family dinner, where Noah's success hasn't dimmed their bond, where Marcus joins by video from wherever Sterling Ventures' new vision leads, always building, always including, always remembering that wealth without worth is just numbers on a screen. "To everyone who serves," Ava raises her glass of water. She doesn't drink champagne anymore. Too many memories. "To everyone who rises by lifting others," Noah adds. The camera pulls back to reveal a simple truth etched in marble and memory. Power isn't about who you can step on, but who you can lift up. The service industry had always known this. The world was finally learning. The revolution was complete. The revelation continued.